Normally my channel is about health and fitness, training, nutrition, and supplementation, but with everything going on in the world right now, it feels very disingenuous to talk about these topics at this time. The murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis 3 weeks ago has exposed a very deep wound in society, the very real reality that is systemic racism and police brutality. At the bottom of this video, you will see a list of victims, some alive and some who have been killed while in custody, as well as civil rights leaders who were punished or lost their lives for doing what is right, from Rosa Parks to Abraham Lincoln to Nelson Mandela. I say that George Floyd was murdered. Yes, murdered. Because there's no other way to put or describe what happened to him and what was caught on video. 3 police officers held him down, with one kneeling on the back of his neck with his face buried in the asphalt, while a 4th police officer stood by with his head up his ass for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. For a little perspective, a UFC round is 5 minutes long. So Officer Derek Chauvin, who kneeled on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, kneeled on his neck for nearly 2 UFC rounds. All of this over a fake $20 bill, regardless of if George Floyd had methamphetamine or fentanyl in his system at the time, is irrelevant. He did not resist arrest, and he most definitely did not deserve to die over a $20 counterfeit bill. So why am I, a straight white male, speaking up? Because it is the right thing to do. President John F. Kennedy said, "We choose to go to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard." President Lincoln, in his famous Gettysburg Address, stated, "47 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal," referencing that even in the Declaration of Independence that was penned by Thomas Jefferson, stated that all men are created equal. Yet here we are in the year 2020 and we are still not there. So why do I choose this? Because it is hard. Because this right now is equivalent in our society in current times as putting a man on the moon. I'm going to tell you a true story about what I've experienced and witnessed on this front. In 2009, when I was in Boston for a track meet with my university, myself being as white as it basically gets, along with 3 of my teammates and training partners, went to a Subway restaurant to grab lunch before going to the track to do our pre-meet warm-up. My 3 teammates, one is Nigerian, he's now a 2-time Olympian for Canada, one is from Haiti, and one is a Jamaican and Lebanese mix. When we went to the Subway restaurant for lunch, my 3 teammates were refused service by the white guy that was serving people. They were in front of me in line. I was the 4th person in line because I was running a couple seconds late. The guy came and asked me what my order was, and he completely disregarded my 3 teammates. So I refused to give my order until they were served. He then went to the back of the restaurant, and we had to wait about 15 minutes before the other person working came to the front and took all. I've seen police in Ottawa question and intimidate young black men for seemingly petty things. Just, why are you here? What are you looking at? Why are you looking at her? Type of things. I've seen store clerks go and stalk black males and females around a store, worried that they're going to steal something. But yet you have another person literally walking out the door who isn't black after just stealing stuff. The whole reason why the George Floyd thing hits so deep across so many people right now is, in my situation, that could have been one of my teammates. That could have been a training partner. That could have been a client. That could have been my former track coach. It could have been a neighbor. It could have been a good friend. When you see a man buried face down in the asphalt saying, "I can't breathe," and then he screams out for his mother, it hits a very visceral nerve in anybody. Now, I do support both the protesters' right to protest, and I do support law enforcement to an extent. So first, to the police. We must remember that the shield or badge that's on your chest stands for upholding the values of society. You are to be the beacon in the community, but somewhere along the line, this has been lost. And for many, I bet you did not get into policing to be labeled as a bad cop, a pig, a racist, or worst of all, a murderer. There are many excellent police officers out there. I know some current and retired police officers who are excellent service records, excellent relations within the community. There are also many black police officers, and in the US, there are many black police chiefs. Here in Ottawa, our current police chief is a black man. And I can only imagine how torn they are between how their community is being treated and portrayed, but also how their profession that they've given years and years of dedication to is being portrayed, especially in the media. Let's remember the motto of what many police departments and services use: protect and serve. This means that you are there to protect your community from actual crime, not made up crime, but it also means you are duty bound to protect life. To serve means that you serve the community. It doesn't serve you. As a police officer, you gave an oath to uphold the law, but also to use your judgment and discretion to protect your community that you serve. That does not mean executing your own brand of justice as you see fit, and hiding behind your badge. And a soldier in a war zone is able to exercise restraint in the use of deadly force. You damn well can as well. Let's be honest. There are and have been policies, both official and unofficial spoken ones, in place within police departments that have vilified and caused the schism between the police force and society, especially the black community in large urban centers. This has been caused by generations of policies in various police services that have largely targeted marginalized communities and started with the black communities going back over 150 years. Policies like stop and frisk, instant suspicion, even the instant beatdown of black men for no reason other than the color of his skin. The excuse of fit the description is a complete crock, and you damn well know it. It's the year 2020. It doesn't fly anymore. You can't say all black people look alike. Add in the justice system with the war on drugs that has disproportionately targeted black men, plus the crime bill that was put into effect and signed into law in 1994 by, at the time, President Bill Clinton, and was partly authored by presidential candidate Joe Biden. And it has disproportionately and targeted black communities the harshest. These led to the justice system handing out harsher sentences to black people than white people for comparable similar crimes. There are inmates in prison that have been there for decades for marijuana possession, yet we have white celebrities who literally purchase their children's way into colleges and universities, and all they get as a legal ramification is a slap on the wrist where they have to do some community service and maybe 30 days in prison. So somebody who gamed the system gets 30 days in weekend prison, while someone who had barely enough marijuana for recreational use is sent to prison for years. Not to mention that the entire prison system has largely been for-profit in the US. You have publicly traded companies who have, in effect, turned police departments into bounty hunters to fill these institutions with arrest quotas. So who do you think is going to be targeted the most by this? And especially low-level misdemeanors, which get the harshest punishments. It's going to be largely poor black citizens in the United States. It makes absolutely no sense that an unarmed black man will die in police custody, but yet a white mass murderer, such as in the Charleston, South Carolina situation, is arrested, given a Kevlar vest, a police escort, protected, and there's zero incident after he murdered multiple black parishioners in church and then just sat down. So a psychopath is given better treatment than someone not even resisting arrest. Think about how asinine that is. Too many people have had bad experiences with the police when in reality it really should be the other way around. I'm not going to sugarcoat this either. We only see the police for the most part on our worst days, and that is what they deal with every single day. They've been targeted for assassination and people with smartphones these days now feel empowered to be more hostile towards them, and it's caused a hypervigilance and for some of them to become a little too trigger happy. This is not a way out for you police officers. This is where you need to do some soul searching and realize you need to learn to de-escalate. The police do have a hard job, but it's made even harder by garbage police officers like Derek Chauvin, as trust gets further eroded by their actions. Now in Canada, we like to play it up that, oh, we're a little bit more morally superior. Here in Ottawa, it's been proven we're no better. We've got several police officers that are on administrative leave right now for sexual harassment. We have Officer Jesse Higgins, who's been documented for harassing black men, taking videos with a taser to a person's neck while they're being taken into custody. And we have multiple other police officers that are suspended for conduct unbecoming, including taking bribes. The excuse for Jesse Higgins is he has PTSD. If that's the case, he should never have been given a badge and gun and put out on the streets. Now, many people like to think that kneeling during the anthem is disrespectful to the flag and to the servicemen and women. It really isn't. When Colin Kaepernick started the kneeling during the anthem, it wasn't to protest soldiers fighting the war on terror. It wasn't protesting against those who gave their lives in previous wars for their country, whether it's in the United States, in Canada, the United Kingdom, France, Italy, Germany, Australia. The protest is directed at bringing some awareness to the systemic issues that are going on between the police department using brutal force and heavy-handed tactics towards the black communities, as we've now been seen more and more coming out. Do I believe that defunding or dismantling the police is the answer? Hell no, it's not the answer. And the reason is simple. Take a look at what was termed the Ferguson effect, where after the police scaled back their activities in some cities like Baltimore and Washington had a brief uptick in violent crimes. Now you're going to get this across the board. In Albuquerque, New Mexico, just a few days ago, there was a shooting at a protest by an armed militia group. I say militia because they really aren't militia, they're just a bunch of jackasses. And who were the people who stepped in to stop this from escalating further after they already shot somebody? It was the Albuquerque, New Mexico police who ended the situation. Also, if you defund the police, what are we going to do when there's other violent crimes? Send a social worker out there to try to de-escalate the situation? You have someone out there with a hatchet? You have someone stabbing people? You got someone mowing people down with their car up Yonge Street in Toronto, in Manhattan, London, England, France? No, a social worker isn't the person to call in this regard. If we defund the police, we're not going to have as many resources to be able to respond to situations like this. So we need to find what the happy medium is there. Also, we need to actually invest into better training for the police. They need to be able to better understand and interact with minority and the black communities. Also, in many places in the US, you need more hours of training to become a barber than you do a police officer. So you're telling me that it's more important to be trained to cut someone's damn hair than it is before they can wield a Glock? We need to really do some serious societal soul searching on that regard. Yes, targeted police efforts are needed in high crime areas, but it needs to be more proactive. It can't be so much reactive or with heavy-handed tactics as the first resort. That just escalates and it erodes the trust between the community and the police further. Yes, trust between the police and those in affluent areas are typically higher, but there also isn't the issue of police in affluent areas being heavy-handed with tactics. There's a saying attributed to criminals that snitches get stitches, but in a recent Medium post by an anonymous former cop saying all police are bastards, it is demonstrated the same is true for those wearing blue. The good cops must start policing their forces and get the cancerous police officers out of the force. Stop putting the shield before those you are sworn to serve and protect, when those poisonous cops are the reason we are in this situation right now. Stop it before there's another Derek Chauvin. This will go a long way in improving relations. Police need to stop with the combativeness and work at de-escalating situations. Yes, the profession is going to attract those insecure boys who have a god complex, but wouldn't be able to hold down any other job because of the dickhead that they are. As I said at the beginning of this, doing the right thing is hard, but it's also why you, police officers, must do it. Your job is already hard enough, so do yourselves a favor and take the badge from those who are unfit to wear it. Now for the protests. The current protests and riots are not the result just of the murder of George Floyd, but they're also AHMAUD Arbery, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, and going back decades. You have, in 1992, Compton burned in the riots due to the LAPD beatdown of black men, especially the documented case of Rodney King during Operation Drop the Hammer. Further, going back in the 1960s, during the Civil Rights Movement, the police in many cities and states had standing orders to beat any person of color at rallies, walks, protests to a pulp. While Abraham Lincoln fought to have slavery abolished and it sparked the American Civil War, ultimately, this cost President Lincoln his life. This led to Jim Crow-style laws, segregation, red line policies, legislations across the USA and many other white-dominated countries that punished and impoverished the black community. In Chicago, for example, the banks refused to let black people have services or be awarded to be able to even get a mortgage to purchase a house. And they weren't even allowed to get properties in certain neighborhoods that were deemed white neighborhoods. Some cities even prevented black citizens from entering certain parts of town, going to the same schools as white students. Canada likes to pretend it doesn't have a dark past, yet Viola Desmond, who's now on our Canadian $10 bill, was harassed in Halifax for going to a segregated theater. Yes, here in Canada we had segregation as well, where she sat closer than her ticket price that she paid for due to her being nearsighted and she couldn't really see the screen from where her ticket price paid for. And instead of just settling while the theater was pretty much empty, the theater had her dragged out and arrested over a penny, 1 cent. We also have systemized police policies or routines that target black people to this very day. In order for us to heal as a society and to bring people together, dialogue that is required and damn well needed, very uncomfortable dialogue, is needed now. Now, for those of you protesting peacefully, I support you 100%. You need to have your plight heard. For those who are using this as an excuse to be opportunistic, you are hijacking the protest. Destroying property, looting, killing people at a peaceful protest does not advance things. It puts things back due to the blowback that will happen. When you see it in the media or not on social media, you're going to notice that there's a lot of white people escalating things. You have Antifa. Just this past weekend, a Wendy's in Atlanta, Georgia was burned to the ground. And the suspects they're looking for aren't what you would stereotypically think right now, that it would be black people. No, they're looking for 2 white people for arson burning down the Wendy's. So those of you who are using this to be opportunistic, you are honestly the scum of the earth. And what you're doing to make actual protesters seem violent and causing harm is disgusting, especially Antifa. Those who are looting, those who are destroying property, a lot of you don't even come from these neighborhoods. So you don't even have to deal with the ramifications that are going to happen. You're causing more damage than good. You're causing people to now further lose jobs, lose opportunity, have heavier police presence. Sadly, at one of the protests, a retired black police officer was killed while defending a store that was then looted. You had a black barbecue stand operator protecting his business, and because things escalated and the police fired back, he was caught in the crossfire and died as well. These situations don't help things. They make it worse. We need to start having more respect for life. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. believed in a peaceful way to get the message across. The only way to move it ahead is with constructive dialogue, having that uncomfortable conversation face to face. Otherwise, this vicious circle of the police, particularly a white police officer, kills a black man who's unarmed or in custody, leads to outrage, leads to protests, leads to riots, leads to things then settling down when the emotions start to relax, and then going back to the status quo, and the cycle will just continue again and again like it has for the past decade. This cycle needs to break, and right now is the best time to do it. The media truly does not care about the messages you have. They just care that it's bringing in ad revenue, ratings, views, regardless of what CNN and Don Lemon or Fox News and Tucker Carlson want to say and make you believe. Don Lemon is making his millions of dollars while he continues his race-baiting, cop-hating narrative to incite CNN journalism, if you can call that actually journalism like it has been for the past decade, would it be showing you the peaceful protests like Flint, Michigan, where the sheriff, Chris Swanson, perfectly handled things by empathizing and supporting the community, particularly the black community. He had his officers put down their riot gear and walk with the protesters. He truly showed that he believes in his oath of protect and serve. That is his way of serving his community, by bringing it together. What the media is showing you is only the violent protest. If the media actually wanted to show the peaceful protests and getting the message across, they would have shown you that situation. So systemic change is dramatically needed. There is no reason that in Canada or the US, with how rich our two countries are, that we have ghettos or projects in our countries. We need to invest into communities more. We need to raise every community up. When we do this, we all win. Take a look around the world. Whenever a country becomes a developing or a developed nation, the whole country is able to then step ahead and prosper better. The exact same thinking needs to be applied here. By improving the socioeconomic status of poor neighborhoods through investments in services and at least a decent paying jobs, we can improve the lives of millions. Not just minimum wage job traps like McDonald's. I'm talking some middle of the road incomes to start to advance these communities. I'm not saying we need affirmative action policies, because that leads to blowback and hostilities. I mean, bring opportunities into these areas so that they can rise up. By having the opportunity present, it then shows people what is actually possible. It gives them something to actually hope and dream for. The other thing we need to do is invest into the youth better, to get them out of leading down into that gang activity path. If we're able to prevent that from happening, we're able to keep more, particularly young black men, out of juvenile detention, out of the prison system, and they're able to advance their lives. It's harder to get a job if they're a felon than it is if they never had an issue in their past. Now, for my fellow white person, we need to do better. Currently, there's a lot of fake activism and virtue signaling coming from you especially, where you're jumping on the bandwagon partly because you've been bored and cooped up due to the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns and shutdowns. Where was your care and outrage before all of this started? Where were you to speak up when you saw a store employee following around a young black male or black female? Where were you to stop the police from being a little over heavy-handed? Where were you to stand up for the black kid in class who the teacher was punishing unfairly? Where are you to give the benefit of the doubt to the young black girl who forgot her bus fare, or maybe she just simply cannot afford it but is too embarrassed to admit so? Where were you before all of this current outrage? Also, Black Lives Matter does not mean that all lives don't matter. That's like saying when a single house on a small street is on fire, that we should pour water on all the houses, and in turn, the one house that's on fire ends up burning down, instead of dedicating the resources to put that fire out. Martin Luther King Jr. dreamt of a day that all men would be judged by the character that they are, not by the color of their skin. Rosa Parks refused to sit at the back of the bus. NASA put a man into orbit and on the moon, largely thanks to a black female mathematician by the name of Katherine Johnson, who they've even named a building after. International sports leagues and organizations have a lot of work to do. The National Hockey League, NHL, and hockey in general has a massive racism issue within it, not just in the sport, but the fans as well. And the vast majority of fans for hockey are white. Earlier this year, a Players Tribune article came out from a former player who highlighted his experience with the Windsor Spitfires, where the captain of the team was constantly racist to him and punched him in the mouth just simply because he didn't like him for being black. You have situations in the NHL where you've got players being harassed by fans being called various names. This isn't just in hockey. European football leagues have some of the worst issues as well. A few years ago in the Italian soccer league, a player was called a monkey. Listen as well to how different race athletes are described. Black athletes are typically described based on strictly their athletic prowess, whereas the white athlete is described based on being a smart player. Let's take a look at LeBron James. He is probably the smartest basketball player in the world at the current time, maybe even ever. And yet, journalism and commentators likes to always highlight, oh, look at the power play he made. Look at how high he jumps out of the gym. Let's take a look at how he can break down the defense without even having to do anything and put all his teammates where they need to be. He even at times seems to know the other team's playbook, like he used to do to the Toronto Raptors in the playoffs. That's not athleticism. That's just strictly he's a very intelligent person playing a sport. Then you have some in the media, I'm not even going to name her name because she's an idiot, telling LeBron and other basketball players to shut up and dribble. No, LeBron, don't shut up and dribble. Use your platform, use your role as a role model to millions of kids around the world to speak up for what is right. He's one of the few athletes who has zero scandals, no bad press, he's got no money issues, does stuff for the community wherever he is, and yet we have people being disrespectful saying, shut up and dribble. No, stand up, LeBron, keep doing what you're doing. Now back to my fellow white person. Just plain and simple, be better. Treat your fellow men and women with dignity and respect. Elevate them. Stop switching sides of the road to walk on the other sidewalk. Stop gripping your purse or wallet tighter in fear that you're going to be robbed. Knock off the preconceived prejudice that you have. It's 2020. It's time to do better. The black community has documented lower rates of employment, lower median pay, higher rates of nearly every health condition related to poor socioeconomic status and morbidity rates, and are most likely to have less access to quality education, healthcare, and food availability within their communities. Some of their communities are known as food deserts, where you can't even get good, nutritious food in their neighborhoods. For meaningful change to actually happen, we need to really have an honest, open dialogue on the matter, and the willingness to listen to the plight of black people and what they are experiencing. Don't get it twisted. What they have faced in society is cruel and unjust. We need to implement not just policies, but societal attitudes that foster an environment for them to prosper, because many of them will work hard to prosper. For once, do what is right simply because it is hard. Let's make it true that every man and woman is indeed created and treated equal, and make Martin Luther King's dream reality.